The explosion tore through the left engine first. Lyra Cross didn't see it. She felt it, a sickening lurch in her gut as the CH-47 Chinook kicked sideways, dipped left, and dropped like stone. The noise hit a half-second later. A deafening clap and a screech of metal that drowned out the crew chief's shout. Smoke flooded the hold, thick and chemical. Gravity shifted violently, throwing bodies and gear into a tumbling crush. She had just enough time to tighten the strap across her chest before impact. Then everything dissolved into black, fire, and screams. When she came to, the world smelled like burning rubber and blood. The rotor blades had stopped spinning. The canopy above her was ripped away, leaving only shredded beams and a jagged line of sky streaked with ash. She lay on her side, half pinned beneath a steel crate. Her helmet gone. Her hands moved first numb, but intact. Ribs hurt. Left ankle tender. Nothing broken. Not yet. She shoved the crate off with both arms and pulled herself up. The first thing she saw was Hill, slumped near the crew ramp, his torso soaked through with blood. He was still breathing. Barely. Corporal Hill, combat medic, 33. He had a daughter back home in Arizona. Lyra remembered that because he'd shown her a photo once, pressed between laminated field cards. She limped toward him, crouched low. Hill, stay with me. He blinked once. That was enough for now. Beyond the wreckage, smoke curled into the canopy above. The Chinook lay cracked open across the jungle floor, its frame sheared at the midpoint. Bodies were scattered around the site, some moving, most not. Ammunition hissed in the heat as it cooked off in intervals. Flames licked through the back half of the fuselage, swallowing canvas and webbing straps. Cross a voice barked from the tree line. She turned and spotted Keller dragging a duffel through the mud. His uniform was singed, and one arm hung limp, but his jaw was set with that same sardonic tension he always carried. We've got company. Movement east. 200 meters and closing. Sergeant Keller. Demolitions. Tough as rusted bolts and twice as blunt. If he was worried, it was bad. Rafik appeared next, silent as always. His sniper rifle was already shouldered, scanning the jungle with the kind of focus that made your spine straighten just by standing near him. No blood on him, no wasted movement. He nodded once in her direction but said nothing. A rustle nearby. Langley staggered out from behind a mangled section of rotor housing, rifle clutched tight, eyes wild and unfocused. He couldn't have been more than 19. Still had the academy tag on his flak vest. He looked at Lyra like he expected someone else to take charge. No one would... She exhaled once and turned back to Hill. We need to move, she said, loud enough for all of them to hear. Now. Keller started forward. There's no comms. Antennas are gone. No way to raise overwatch. You saw the flash trail, it was a shoulder launch. SA-24, maybe. That means ground teams. And they'll be here fast. We have 4 left, Lyra said. Hill makes 5. We're not staying. 5's a stretch, Keller muttered. But he didn't argue. Cross stepped around the broken landing gear and scanned what remained. Heat shimmered off the ground. The fuel tank had split. One fire team was beyond help. Another was just gone. Inside what remained of the cockpit, she spotted the navigator's pouch pinned under a half-melted seat. She reached in, fingers burned by the hot frame, and pulled it free. The map inside was scorched down the middle, one corner blackened and curling away. But it still showed the river valley. Still traced the elevation arc leading to their target compound. She folded it slowly, pressing the burned edge flat, and tucked it into her vest. Behind her, Rafik knelt beside Hill and gave a slight shake of the head. He won't last long. Gut shot. Maybe liver. Hill opened his mouth to speak. Lyra leaned in close. Don't, he said, don't stop. Just get them there. She nodded and tightened the strap around his torso, more for his mind than the bleeding. I'll get you there too. It was a lie. They both knew it. Langley stumbled again, his boots catching on a length of shredded cable. Lieutenant, what do we do? Lyra Cross turned back to the others. We head northwest, toward the ridgeline. I'll lead. Keller, rear guard. Rafik, take point until we hit the slope. Langley carry Hill's pack. Langley blinked. Ma'am, I don't know if I... You will, she said. Not sharp. Just certain. She moved first, stepping over twisted fuselage, past one of the gunners who hadn't made it, and into the tree line beyond. The jungle closed in quick dents with humidity and the faint rot of disturbed soil. Behind her, the others fell into step, one by one. Fire crackled behind them. The Chinook burned bright in the clearing, a broken shell against the green. It would be seen from kilometers away. It would draw every insurgent in the province like a signal flare. They had no time, no air cover, and no second shot. What they had was a half-burned map, 4 working rifles, and a reason to keep moving. As they slipped deeper into the undergrowth, Lyra didn't look back. She didn't need to. The fire behind her wasn't just the wreck. It was everything they'd lost, and everything they would have to become. The ridgeline curved just enough to give them cover, but the brush was thin. Rain fell through the canopy in cold, slow taps, pooling between their boots and soaking the exposed seams of their gear. Lyra Cross lay prone, elbows dug into the damp soil, eyes fixed on the compound below. Through the magnified lens of Hill's spotting scope propped now against her rifle bag, she watched a pair of guards pace lazily past a corrugated sheet that passed for a fence. Beyond it stood the target building, no more than a cluster of bamboo and scavenged metal, reinforced at the corners and shaded by a leaning banana tree. Inside, she counted 3 shapes. One sat, one stood, one moved like a prisoner head low, gait off balance. A flash of reflection off his glasses confirmed it. Edward Grant, still alive. Keller knelt beside her, chewing the edge of a damp ration bar with silent aggression. "Place is lighter than I thought," he muttered, barely above the rain. "Maybe a dozen on rotation, probably more out on sweep." "Could be a forward cage," Rafik added. He leaned against a tree with his rifle held vertical. "Temporary. They're moving him soon." Cross said nothing. Her fingers moved across the half-burned map, laid flat across her thigh. The ink was streaked from the earlier downpour, but the terrain still showed enough to orient. She traced the ravine on the west side with the edge of her fingernail, measuring slope by memory. Hill lay a few feet behind her, propped against his pack with a folded tarp shielding his upper chest. His breathing was shallow. She could hear the change, not panicked, just smaller than it had been. He hadn't spoken much since morning. Langley was the last to settle in, his knees muddy, hands fidgeting with a spare mag he kept checking without reason. He watched the compound without really seeing it. Lyra drew her pen from the breast slot in her vest and marked the map. The original approach vector was gone, now choked by patrol presence and damaged trails. But the runoff channels still held. They could use them to get close. She shaped a new route in short, deliberate strokes. Keller glanced at it, then leaned in. "You thinking breach from the rear wall?" She nodded. "Low ground. Mudline gives cover. We time it at nightfall. Quiet breach. 1 fire team. No signals. No crossfire." Rafik didn't speak. He just checked his scope once, then flicked a bit of leaf debris from his bolt cover. Hill stirred. Lyra turned slightly, crawling back toward him on one elbow. His eyes were open, cloudy, but alert. "I saw the guy," he whispered. Still had his ID tag on, clipped to the left side. "You saw right," she said softly. "We're going to pull him out." He reached up, slowly, unsteady fingers working at the chain around his neck. The small steel cross, dull and worn, slid into view. He pulled it off with effort and held it out to her. Lyra hesitated, then took it with both hands, cradling the weight of it for a beat too long. She didn't speak. Neither did he. His hand dropped back to his side. His eyes stayed open, but he didn't blink again. Keller looked over and saw it happen. He exhaled through his nose, once, and went back to his prep. Langley froze, but said nothing. Lyra tucked the pendant into her vest, under the plate line, resting it just against her skin. She folded the map again, this time bending it around the path she had just drawn, creasing it hard so the new approach held its shape. She slid it into her sleeve pocket where the edge stuck out just enough for quick access. "There's no second try," she said flatly. To the team around her, "We do this clean, silent, one shot." Keller checked the charge pouch on his belt and nodded. "We only ever get one." Rafik looked down at the compound, eyes narrowing. "I'll call Marks just before entry. If I drop one, the others won't hear it." Langley swallowed, then adjusted the strap on his helmet. He didn't try to speak, but his hands moved with more steadiness now. Lyra scanned the tree line once more, then let her eyes fall to the body beside her. The tarp barely moved now. She reached down and resecured it around Hill's chest, not as a gesture, just to keep the rain off. There would be time to remember later, but only if they survived. She checked the light. 30 minutes to dark. Enough time to move, enough time to make it count. The rain had deepened into a steady curtain by the time Lyra Cross reached the edge of the compound. Light from inside bled dimly through gaps in the bamboo fencing, caught in the mist, and vanished. She pressed her back to a damp trunk, signaled once with 2 fingers, and moved. The jungle gave way to a band of slick mud broken only by scattered debris cans, torn netting, a tire half sunk in standing water. She stepped over them with deliberate weight. Each footfall pressed into the earth and rolled forward to avoid splash. Behind her, Langley mirrored her movement, 1 pace behind, rifle barrel low. He kept his breathing under control, but she could hear the tremor in it every time they paused. Rafik had already split off 20 minutes earlier, taking the high ground to the northeast. He hadn't spoken since. Keller was just ahead now, crouched beside a rusted oil drum, examining a faint wire strung ankle-high between 2 rotting stakes. He didn't need tools. His fingers moved with practiced care, snapping the wire and slipping it gently aside like someone folding fabric. Cross gave a short nod, stepped past him, and dropped to 1 knee beside the runoff ditch that marked the interior boundary. It was half clogged with leaves, just wide enough to crawl through, and still running with slow-moving water. She reached down, tested the depth, and slid forward on elbows. The weight of her vest shifted with each pull. She could feel the steel cross pendant move against her collarbone, caught between armor and skin. It was a steady presence, cold and grounding. Inside the ditch, visibility dropped to less than a meter. Keller followed, then Langley, both quiet enough to make the brush barely tremble. A single branch cracked somewhere above them, but nothing followed. The guards were still talking, distracted by their own smoke and the makeshift lantern they'd propped against a leaning pole. The bamboo structure came into view in fragments corner joints first, then the sagging roofline, then the side panel with no guard. Cross tapped Keller's shoulder and pointed at the entry seam. He nodded, adjusted his weight, and produced a short pry tool wrapped in black tape. The door made no sound as he eased it open, just a long exhale of wood on wood. Langley hesitated, just half a second, his left boot frozen mid-step. His breath caught audibly. Cross turned and caught his eyes, steady and silent, then nodded once. He moved. Inside. The air was close. The hostage sat in the far corner, his wrists bound, legs tucked under. No light. Just the faint reflection from his lenses and the rise of his chest. He looked up as Cross approached, blinking rapidly, clearly expecting something worse. She knelt beside him and cut the cord at his ankles first, then wrists. No words. No need. His lips parted to speak, but she shook her head once. He nodded instead and leaned against the wall for balance. Keller signaled from the doorway, 2 fingers forward, 1 fist close, movement nearby. Cross helped Grant to his feet and guided him low toward the open frame. Langley took rear. They exited the way they entered, slipping into the ditch as Keller paused to ease the bamboo shut behind them. Rafik's voice came through over the earpiece, soft and clipped. "South fence? Patrol inbound?" 4 men? 40 seconds? They didn't run. They crawled. Through water, through mud, through broken weeds and leaf rot that clung to their sleeves. By the time the patrol reached the corner of the compound, the team had vanished into the jungle. They did not leave a sound. They were halfway down the ravine when the first shout rang out. It cracked through the night like a flare, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots crashing through brush and the hard rip of automatic fire. Tracers lit the tree line behind them, red-orange arcs that punched through branches and soil. Too close, too fast. Lyra Cross didn't speak. She didn't have to. One hand went up in a closed fist and the others dropped low into the muddy slope. Half crawling, half sliding. Grant stumbled behind her, one hand still tied in a half loop at the wrist for control. His breathing was loud, strained. Langley grunted and yanked him forward. Rafik stopped just long enough to turn and fire once. The report of his suppressed rifle was swallowed by the jungle, but the result wasn't. A short yelp, then a heavy fall. One down, but too many remained. Keller kept pace until they reached a natural drop, 3 meters straight into a washed-out riverbed. Water churned below, black and high from the rains. Cross pointed. Keller nodded, and without waiting, dropped first. He landed hard, rolled, then signaled for the others to jump. Lyra pulled Grant close and pushed him down. He hit awkwardly, cried out, but Keller caught part of the fall. Langley followed, arms tight to his chest. Rafik fired another shot, then another, before slinging his rifle and sliding down the slope, boots cutting a line through the clay. Cross came last. The drop knocked the air out of her. She hit hands first, rolled, and sprang up into a crouch, eyes scanning for movement. "They're flanking," Keller said. 10 seconds, maybe less. "Charges?" she asked. He grinned without humor and pulled the compact demo kit from his side pouch. Always. The bank above them rattled as gunfire stitched into the tree line. Splinters fell like hail. Cross grabbed Langley by the collar and yanked him into motion. Southwest. Through the water. He hesitated. "I can't." She didn't wait. "Move, or they die behind you." He did. Rafik covered them, now wet to the knees, rifle tucked into his shoulder. He said nothing. He never did. Just watched the edge of the tree line and waited. Keller stayed behind. He wired the charge low, nestled in the root ball of a fallen tree, shielded from view. The detonator clicked softly in his hand. As Cross passed him, she caught his eye. "Don't wait too long," she said. "Wouldn't dream of it," he replied. The team pushed forward into the riverbed, moving through water thick with runoff and debris. The current wasn't deep, but it pulled at their legs, and the noise covered everything: their breath, their boots, the pain in Grant's face as he stumbled again. Cross checked over her shoulder. Keller still hadn't moved. Then, a flash. The blast rolled out with a dull thump and a wave of pressure that shook the air. Dirt showered down from above. Screams cut short. Cross kept moving. 5 minutes later, they found a narrow bank, half collapsed under rain, and crawled behind it. Langley collapsed first, gasping, soaked to the chest. Grant slid onto his side, clutching his ribs. Rafik took rear again, lying prone, eyes fixed on the direction they'd come from. Cross crouched in the shallows, checking the others, mentally accounting for wounds, weight, ammo, direction. Then she felt it, a cold absence against her collar. Her hand went to her vest and came back empty. The steel cross was gone. She turned back toward the slope, just mud now, slick and broken. Somewhere back there, in the fall or the run, it had slipped free. It was buried now, gone with the man who had carried it first. She didn't move, didn't reach for it, just lowered her hand and stood. Grant sat up slowly. Was that the only way out? "No," Cross said, "but it was the only one we could use." Langley wiped mud from his face and looked at her like he wanted to say something. He didn't. She didn't give him the chance. Behind them, the jungle glowed faintly where the fire spread through the trees, the same orange wash that had lit the Chinook 2 nights ago. Another reminder, another scar. They had 5 hours of dark left, no trail, no signal, 1 wounded man, 3 functional rifles, and one leader who didn't stop, not even to grieve. Cross checked her compass, nodded once to herself, and moved. The others followed. The rain hadn't stopped since before sunrise. It wasn't a downpour anymore. It was just there, constant, as much a part of the air as the heat and the rot. Every surface in the jungle dripped. Leaves shimmered. Boots squelched deeper into soil that no longer resisted. It clung and pulled, filling treads, hiding roots, wearing them all down one slow step at a time. Lyra Cross led from the front, machete in one hand, compass in the other. Her fingers kept brushing the collar of her vest. Out of habit, she would reach for the pendant and remember gone, buried back in the riverbed mud 2 valleys behind. It didn't matter. She knew the direction now. She carried the weight without needing the metal. Behind her, the others slogged through the flooded path in silence. Langley carried the majority of the gear, his arms trembling slightly from exertion. He didn't complain. Grant walked beside him, slower than before, but upright. The ropes had left burns on his wrists, now bandaged with soaked gauze. His glasses were fogged again, but he spoke clearly. "They wanted the authentication matrix," he said, keeping his voice low. "Didn't get it. I deleted it before they cracked the access sequence." Keller grunted behind him. "But you kept something." Grant nodded. "Just one line. One fallback. It's stored here." He tapped the side of his head. "Final override key. No one else has it." Cross didn't slow. "Then we keep you moving." A fallen tree blocked the path ahead. It hadn't fallen naturally. The cut at the base was too clean. She signaled for a halt, scanned the canopy, then led them in a wide arc around it. Just as they pushed through the vines on the other side, a faint buzz passed overhead. A drone. Small and fast. Skimmed above the trees, barely visible in the mist. It didn't linger, just passed and was gone. Rafik crouched beside a tangle of roots and waited for it to clear the range before speaking. "Third one today." "Eyes open," Cross said. "They're looking for bodies, not ghosts." As they moved again, Keller started to lag. His sleeve had been rolled up earlier to check the leech bite, and now the skin around the wound had gone pale, slightly green. He noticed her glance and smirked. "Don't give me that look, Lieutenant. I've had worse from bad food in Kabul." "You're shivering," she replied without slowing. "That's not rations. It's character development," he muttered. "It's what the rookies need." Langley gave him a sideways glance but said nothing. Instead, he adjusted his grip on the gear and moved ahead to help Grant across a submerged route crossing. It was small, but it mattered. Cross saw it, noted it, said nothing. They camped under a sloping ridge that had partially caved in, offering a shallow pocket of dry ground beneath an overhang. The ground steamed with heat, but it was less exposed. Rafik took first watch, his rifle balanced across his knees. Later, when they passed a stretch of jagged hillside, Cross spotted something half buried under Vine's carbon frame, snapped fins, a shattered lens casing. She pulled the wreckage out gently. A reconnaissance UAV, long dead, but the onboard battery casing was intact. She sat with it by the rock wall, stripped the casing, and rerouted the remaining charge into a field compass with GPS ping. The screen flickered once. Location confirmed. They were 5 hours from Echo Kilo, southeast quadrant. That night, the rain returned heavier, beating against the leaves like static. They sat in silence, curled into themselves. No one asked about Keller's wound. No one asked about the pendant. Even Rafik, cold and removed, leaned back against the stone and spoke. "I got hit in the thigh once. No evac. Had to crawl 6 kilometers back to a road. Took 3 days. I chewed through the strap in my mouth to stay awake." No one answered, but Cross looked at him, just once. When morning came, they stood again. Cross checked her compass, then the torn map fragment. The ink had faded more. One edge had started to peel away entirely. She folded it one last time and slipped it into her pocket. The jungle wasn't clearing, but it had begun to change. Fewer vines, firmer soil. The air still smelled of rot, but now it had traces of ash and fuel. They were getting closer, and the silence they carried of the lost, of the nearly broken, was not weakness. It was weight, and they bore it together. The fog thinned just enough to expose the ridgeline ahead. Pale light filtered through the mist, casting long shadows over the loose shale that sloped toward the final valley. Somewhere beyond that drop, less than 2 kilometers away, was Forward Operating Base Echo Kilo. Lyra Cross kept her body low and her breathing slow. They were close. Too close for mistakes. Rafik raised his hand to halt, his other already steadying his rifle. One finger pointed left, another to his own eyes. Contact. The shot came before she had time to nod. A sharp crack echoed across the slope, followed instantly by a ricochet that chewed into the shale near Keller's boots. Rafik dropped into prone and fired twice tight, measured bursts, but the third round hit him low in the side. He rolled, clenching his teeth, rifle still in his grip. Rafik's hit, Keller called out. Cross didn't hesitate. Smoke out, she shouted, already sliding downhill to cover. Keller pulled a small canister from his pouch and threw it blind. A hiss filled the air as gray vapor began to spread across the slope. Langley froze at the edge of the incline, rifle slack in his grip, eyes fixed on the brush beyond. Another round hit nearby, spraying gravel across his vest. He didn't move. Cross crawled fast and low, grabbed the front of Langley's plate carrier, and pulled him down hard. You move when I say move, she snapped. Not when it's safe. Understood. He nodded, breath shallow, and followed her crawl to the rear of a flat boulder. We're cut off from the low trail, Keller said, crawling beside her. Too exposed. She pulled the folded map from her sleeve pocket and laid it across her thigh, tracing the ridgeline with her fingertip. It no longer resembled the paper she started with edges melted from rain. The ink bleeding in places, but the slope held its memory. There was a ledge about 40 meters west, covered in bramble. It bent slightly around a rock face. It wasn't a trail, but it could be. We'll flank west, she said, already refolding the map to reshape the angle. Keller, lay your last charge here. Delay fuse. Cover our back. He nodded, pulled the packet from his belt, and began setting it without a word. Grant helped Rafik up, shoulder under his arm. Blood soaked through Rafik's side, but he still held the rifle close. He nodded once to Cross. He could move. With the smoke starting to clear, Cross led the push. She went first, ducking under thorny brush, sliding over broken shale, fingers scraping against the rock face for balance. The new route didn't allow for formation, just single file, fast and low. The sound of gunfire rose behind them. Keller set the charge and sprinted after them, his boots hammering loose stone. A loud thud rolled through the mist seconds later, cutting the echo of fire. Not a clean kill, just a delay. But enough. The group reached the final bend. Through the thinning fog, Cross saw the faint outline of a perimeter beacon metal, upright and humming. Echo Kilo. They were nearly there. She turned back once, watching the ridgeline fade behind them. No more flares, no more fire. They'd made it through, but not untouched, not unchanged. The first thing Lyra Cross noticed was the light bleeding through the canvas. It wasn't harsh, just soft enough to blur the edges of the cot above her and the silhouette of a clipboard swinging gently at the foot of the bed. Somewhere nearby, a generator coughed into rhythm. Boots moved past in pairs. Orders exchanged quietly. No gunfire. No jungle. She was alive. A medic leaned over, said something she didn't catch. He adjusted the IV tape to her arm and moved on without waiting for a reply. She tried to sit up, failed the first time, then braced her elbow and pushed herself upright. The cot creaked. Her uniform was still soaked, sleeves caked in dried earth, the knees nearly black with mud. No one had changed her out yet. There wasn't time. Through the open flap of the tent, she saw Langley sitting on the edge of a bench, helmet in his hands, eyes fixed on a patch of gravel. He hadn't moved. Keller was gone, flown out by medevac within minutes of arrival. Rafik had been carried in on an improvised stretcher made from 2 rifles and a torn poncho. No one said how bad the wound was. And Grant taken straight to debrief. 4 officers had met him with a laptop and a folding table before he even sat down. No one had asked her for anything. A young staffer stepped into the tent and stopped just short of her cot. He didn't speak, just extended a clean cloth-wrapped bundle, arms rigid. She unwrapped it slowly. The steel cross pendant sat in the center, polished and dry. The chain coiled neatly beside it. She stared at it for a long time. Then she clipped it through the first loop on her belt and let it hang. Not to wear, not to remember. Just to finish what someone else had started. Outside, a screen showed a looping drone feed, wide-angle thermal footage from hours earlier, a dark shape in the trees, the burned-out Chinook wreckage still visible in silhouette. There were movement trails plotted in blue, fading now, showing where enemy patrols had been. One path cut through all of them. A thin yellow line that reached the edge of the screen and stopped where Echo Kilo began. Langley looked up and caught her eye through the tent flap. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just nodded once. She returned the gesture. The clipboard swung again. A nurse signed off something behind her. The torn map was gone. She had thrown it out herself on the stretcher, somewhere between the gate and the cot. It had nothing left to give. She lay back slowly, muscles heavy, eyes drawn toward the sound of boots and radios and steel folding chairs scraping on concrete. They would ask for a report. Eventually. But for now, no one needed to know who she was, or how she got them home. And she was fine with that.